In this presentation, you will learn what is considered American literature of the 21st century, and I'll be going over some of the most important genres found after the year 2000, many of which emerged around the turn of the century. I will provide some examples of the different genres and suggest some possible reasons for their predominance in our current age. So, American literature of the 21st century is, as its name indicates, literature written after the year 2000 and up to the present. As we are dealing with very recent texts, we're just talking about less than 20 years in the century, and due to the fact that the literature is so varied that it is hard to come up with a thorough description of its characteristics. Texts in this period, though, share some main features we'll be discussing, and of course, they're deeply embedded in the United States socio-political context. Therefore, this type of literature deals with current themes and issues, such as technological advances, and it tends to reflect reality. There is, as we shall see, a tendency back to realism. Let's go into some of the most important genres and themes found in 21st century American literature. Science fiction is a genre which did not originate in this century, but which gained more and more popularity as technology developed, and science fiction stories did not seem so far-fetched or unreal. In this type of fiction based on scientific or technological developments or theories, the setting is usually a faraway place or galaxy or an alternate world very different from what we consider our reality. These works are actually meant to provide a sort of way out of reality, an escape. Given that the first years of the 21st century witnessed a series of tragic and catastrophic events such as the terrorist attacks of 9/11, the military conflicts in Iran and Afghanistan, the devastation left by Hurricane Katrina, and the 2007 and 8 financial crisis, it comes as no surprise that an escape from reality was needed. These are some examples of this type of literature. However, as the century began to unfold, there was a gradual shift from the need to escape reality towards a different, although realistic, depiction of fiction, and thus a new genre emerged, transrealism. The difference with science fiction is that it does not take place in an alternate or different world. It introduces fantastic elements in a world which would otherwise be deemed normal. It usually deals with a realistic depiction of characters, rejecting stereotypical figures or flat characters. The main objective of this type of fiction is to challenge consensus reality, which mainly defines who is normal and who is not. You will read more about it in the article called A Transrealist Manifesto by Rudy Rucker, the writer, critic, and mathematician who coined the term. Some of the best-known transrealist works are Margaret Atwood's The Handmaid's Tale, Kurt Vonnegut's Slaughterhouse-Five, Philip Dick's A Scanner Darkly, among others. Within the science fiction and transrealist genres, there's a subcategory that is highly prominent in the literature of the century, and that is dystopian literature. Works belonging to this genre explore current social and political issues in an imagined society which is the direct opposite of Thomas More's idealized society in his 1516 book Utopia. It usually deals with a post-apocalyptic society defined by oppression, poverty, environmental ruin. In short, it offers a dim vision of the future. Some of the works described previously as sci-fi, such as The Hunger Games, would also fit this subcategory of dystopian fiction. And here are some other examples. Some other new literary genres came to existence during the end of the past century and gained prominence in the 21st as a consequence of the technological advances, especially in connection with the rise of new reading mediums, such as the cell phone, computer, tablet, and the rise also of social media. One of these is digital fiction, which is a narrative read from a computer and that can be app-based or web-based. It differs from any novel read from a computer in the sense that this type of fiction was originally made digitally, and it would have no meaning outside that medium, either because it contains hyperlinks, moving images, or simply because it is interactive. The reader takes part in the story, such as in the case of interactive fiction. This literary genre combines basically three media into one: books, movies, and the internet. Here are some examples for you to have a clearer idea of what this type of literature does. So feel free to search online for these examples. Some other genres also came about by the rise or due to the rise of new technologies and reading mediums, and these are Twitter fiction and blogging. These are narratives which are limited by the number of characters you can type in Twitter. 140 originally and 280 now. It goes without saying that this type of literature puts a writer's skill to the test, as it shows his ability to present a fictitious but complete narrative in a limited number of words. However, the interesting thing about Twitter fiction and other social media literature as well is that you do not have to be an author or well-established writer to tweet a short story. One of the reasons this type of fiction has grown in significance in the past few years has to do, I believe, with the immediacy of the modern age. We live in a time in which we need to have and do everything right now. The current pace of life makes it hard for anyone to have enough leisure time as to, for instance, read a novel the size of James Joyce's Ulysses. Therefore, people usually read during very short intervals, such as on the commute, which makes Twitter fiction an ideal way to start and finish a story. This goes hand in hand with another type of fiction which is reduced to a few words, microfiction, also known as sudden fiction or flash fiction. Microfiction did not originate in the 21st century, one of the most famous examples being Ernest Hemingway's six-word story, but it has flourished to a great extent in our present day. These are stories of no more than 500 words, usually even less than 100. Apart from not being time-consuming to read, these stories perfectly fit a screen. The power of this type of fiction is the active role of the reader in filling all the gaps left by the author in the text. Here's an example from the winner of the 2015 Botham Short Prose Prize. It's called Taylor Swift by Hugh Bem Steinberg. Last but not least, the globalization of our modern world has also allowed readers to have easier access to reading material from other parts of the world, as is the case with the graphic novels and manga from Japan. Graphic novels are narratives in comic book format but published as a book. They combine words and images and were originally named comics, although as the term is usually associated with children's stories, the term graphic novels is usually preferred. They have recently gained recognition and awards, and most of them have achieved a high level of complexity and density. Another reason why these types of novels have gained considerable attention is the gradual shift towards visual formats with a huge popularity of television and film. Here are some examples of the genre. So this was just an introduction to these genres. In the following weeks we'll be dealing with some of them in more detail. So I hope this has been a clear introduction. Thank you for listening.